Hello, guys. Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Good. So thank you, John and Ryan, for joining me for our GK webinar series. It's a replay from a webinar we had about 2.5 months ago, and there we are, 2.5 months. Coronavirus, still in confinement, although I'm in the office actually. I think both of you guys are in confinement. I really wanted to go back and talk about a lot of the things that we discussed last time. There was some pretty awesome insights that you both gave on the real estate market, the mortgage market. So I'll start with just I'll let you guys give your introduction. I want to know a little bit more about your business and so forth, and then I'll take it from there. John?
Sure. Hey, everybody. So let's see, I've been in real estate now for about 17 years in total. Started as a mortgage broker. So Ryan, I feel your pain. I then became a developer and built some high-end spec homes. And then I transitioned over to the other side of the aisle and started selling real estate full-time. And I think it was about 2011, so about 9 years now. I'm the director of the estates division at a company based in Beverly Hills called The Agency. So we're highly renowned as probably the #1 luxury brokerage here in Los Angeles. I lead a team of about 10 people. Last year we did just shy of about 250 million, excuse me, which ranked us number 14 in the country last year. Excited to be here and talk a little bit about what's happening with the market.
Nice. Thank you, John.
So John knows what he's doing. My name is Ryan Grant, and I run the Ryan Grant team at Fairway Mortgage. And we're fortunate to be one of the top lenders in the country. I think we'll help probably close to 1,500 families this year for a total loan volume of about 1.2 billion. And we are in the midst of one of the most interesting times of the mortgage industry that I've seen since I've been in it in 2005 when I started. And so excited to talk about the ups and downs we're experiencing right now and learn from you guys about your respective industries as well.
You mean the most interesting time in literally history, right?
Yes.
No, thank you both for taking the time and from your incredibly busy days, which is crazy, right? We're all confined, but you guys are super busy. So are we. When it makes sense with a lot of things that don't make sense right now. So I think that's really the #1 thing here. Gerber Kawasaki prides itself in being a resource for our clients in anything that relates to making financial decisions. So that's why I have you guys here. You guys are both experts in your fields. You guys are both awesome. Disclosure standpoint, John is a friend and a client, and obviously one of my most trusted real estate advisors. So what I wanted to do is just kick it off. It's COVID, coronavirus, pandemic. What's happening? What's new? How's business, John? Let's start there.
Sure, that's a broad question.
I mean, you're busy as hell. Explain to me why that is.
Busy as hell pretty much sums it up. Yeah, no, the market's just on fire right now. So I guess we last spoke, you said, about 2.5 months ago?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting time looking back now because the real estate market really kind of started its recovery, I would say, kind of like early to mid-May. That's when real estate agents became essential service providers again, because before we weren't even legally allowed to be out showing property. Yeah. And as some restrictions started to loosen, as people started to reintegrate back into society, the market just picked up, day over day, week over week, and really picked up a ton of momentum. I'll obviously speak more specifically about what's happening here in Los Angeles, but just sort of on a more macro level, if you look at the difference between May to June nationwide, May was the slowest month in real estate nationwide that we've seen since October of 2010, and June was one of the biggest months we've seen on record. As a company, for us, the agency is actually our biggest month ever. So it's pretty remarkable. For myself and my team, we had 13 escrows last month, which is,
Do you attribute that to just people back from quarantine, like, hey, I just need to buy a new home? Do I need to get a bigger space? Or is it just some pent-up demand that hasn't happened in months? Can you pinpoint it? Can you even?
Yeah, like anything, I don't think it's ever any one thing. I think it's a combination of different things that sort of led us to where we are. Obviously, a low interest rate environment is helping to fuel this. No question, that's playing a big part. And of course, Ryan will speak to that, I'm sure, later. I also think that a lot of people have sort of come to a place of acceptance that, okay, if this is going to be the quote unquote new norm, at least for the foreseeable future, I want a bigger home office. I want a bigger backyard. I want a pool. I want things that are going to allow me to be more comfortable in this space. Coming out of May into June, I think we were propelled by just a general sense of restlessness. People were eager to get out of the house. And I think that combined with kind of a release of the bottleneck of inventory that had been pent up in the months prior, got a lot of activity going in the market. But the other big part about this that I'm seeing, particularly in the higher end arena, is that COVID has actually shined a big spotlight on all of the wonderful attributes of what it is to live in Los Angeles.
Sure.
Right? Most people don't want, if you think about most other major metropolitan cities, they have one thing in common, which is they all center around their downtown.
Right.
Downtown's the hub. That's where everyone lives. They congregate, they work, which means it's comprised of, vertical stack living, concrete jungle, really condensed in there. LA is very different. LA is, completely spread out. And I think that having that space is one of the things that people are seeking right now. So I'm having a lot of clients moving here from New York, San Francisco, London, Tokyo, you name it, because of the space that you're able to have here. And of course, the weather plays a huge part. For example, I have a client that just moved out from New York last week. They have a great setup in New York, right? They have a 4,000 square foot apartment overlooking the park. It's not a bad place to be, but you have a hot, muggy winter followed by a cold, bleak winter stuck inside that apartment.
Yeah.
And they got 3 kids. They want a pool. They want a yard. They want to be able to live indoor, outdoor. And that's actually, despite the rising number of cases that we all see on CNN happening here in LA, that's bringing a lot of new customers and a lot of new people here.
I'm getting same conversation with clients. We have clients all over the country, and a lot of clients are telling us we would love to be in LA right now. However, it's not a cheap city to live in, right? Is that still making a you can go and live in Denver, you can go and live in Austin. Maybe the weather is not as good, but are those cities going to do better in this environment?
They certainly might. I think the answer to that question is it's all relative. In the higher end arena, in the luxury space, LA is actually a tremendous value, comparatively speaking. If you look at what it costs on a price per square foot basis to live in New York or San Francisco or London or any of the number of those other cities I just mentioned, you're paying upwards of, it could be $3,000, $5,000, even more per square foot to be confined to, I hate to say it, to a box. You're confined to an apartment where maybe you have a little patio, as opposed to, out here, 1,000, 2,000, maybe 3,000 square feet at the most, and that's for something ultra high end.
Yeah.
So I think that in the luxury arena, LA had been sort of a sleeping giant for a number of years. And then 5, 6, 7 years ago, the eyes of the real estate world really got fixed on LA. And people that always kind of looked at LA as a place to visit previously now want they want to park some kind of residency here. Even if that's a few weeks or a few months, they want to have some type of base here. And LA is a different city than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I think that's a big part of it. For the sort of next rung down, I think that there's a strong argument to be made to Denver or Portland or any number of those cities that perhaps might be a more affordable place to live. Mm-hmm. It really depends, like everything, how long we're going to be in this.
Right. We'll get to that. Ryan, I know you're in Tahoe right now. Amazing place to spend summer. Talk to me a little bit, first of all, what made you decide just to get out of you live in Orange County, what made you decide to get out of town? Obviously, you have the opportunity to live in Tahoe, but talk a little bit about if that's a trend that you're seeing with mortgages and people trying to buy new homes in other places and so forth.
It is, yeah. So we're licensed in, I think, 18 different states at the moment. And we've done that strategically over the past few years because we were already seeing the flight out of California for affordability reasons, tax reasons. And then when COVID hit, we started seeing it a lot more. So Idaho is a big hotspot. We're starting to see people move to different parts of Colorado, different parts of Utah, different parts of Oregon. And so you just look at these places and there's not a lot of cases of COVID, and you get a lot of land and you're outside and you're not congested. And so that was, we initially came up here, we bought a place, and I just said, look, if I'm working in my home office in Orange County or I'm working in a home office here, it's the same camera I'm staring into, right? You might as well be able to enjoy where you live. And so I think that that is definitely playing a part, not to mention, space for home offices or casitas or granny flats if, people want to move parents in so they can kind of stay in the bubble. So I think all those issues are playing into, kind of the mindset of why the consumer is making the decisions they're making.
Makes sense. I mean, I know the desert is really hot, not just temperature, but the market is really, really hot. I have maybe 3 or 4 clients personally trying to buy homes there now. So I think a lot of people are thinking about, hey, what other places we need to be.
The areas, sorry to interrupt. The areas, again, not surprisingly, we're seeing a lot of activity right now, are anywhere that's within a short driving distance from a big hub. So for example, Napa is super hot right now because for anyone that's in Silicon Valley or San Francisco, it's easy enough to get back into the city if you need to, but you're far enough removed that you feel like you have some space, you're out in the country. Right. Malibu is super hot right now. Montecito, Santa Barbara, Palm Springs. I mean, for all the obvious reasons that we just stated, that these sort of areas out on the fringe are really hot at the moment.
Do you think people are looking at those spaces maybe to be even a primary residence and there's maybe commute back into the city?
I'll probably say this 18 different times, 18 different ways before the end of this, but it all depends on how long this lasts. Like, for example, this client that I'll just pick on them for the moment as the same example. It just moved out here from New York, right? They want to be in LA for the same reason they want to be in New York. I'm sure their business is here or in one of those two markets, but also proximity to nightlife, restaurants, shopping, and so forth. That proximity only has value if we can actually utilize it.
Okay.
If things start to reopen, we can go to restaurants and go shopping and go to the theater. Well, then that has value. If we can't, that value diminishes. So it's just in direct correlation to how long we're going to live like this.
So none of us is a doctor. Neither one of us has any pandemic experience, but I'm sure as you guys have, I'm asked all the time, when is it going to be over? What do you guys expect? And so forth, right? And there is some positive news on the vaccine side of things, right? But we all as professionals have to kind of make some plans for our businesses, for our clients, to figure out really what's happening. Give me if you have if you have some kind of crystal ball. What does that look like, John? What does that look like, Ryan?
That's a loaded question.
I'll let Dr. Grauman go first.
Yeah, very excellent. Thank you. I'll kick it over to you in a moment, Professor.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm seeing right now. Right now, what I'm seeing is that you heard me talk when we spoke a couple months ago about just basic supply and demand economics as that relates to real estate. And right now, there is still enough demand relative to the amount of supply that we have that it's not only helped prices to stabilize, but believe it or not, has actually increased prices in certain areas, which is crazy to think about, rising home values in the middle of a pandemic. It would not be, unreasonable to look 6-12 months out, particularly in a city like LA that's hugely driven by entertainment and tourism, two industries that are just getting hammered right now, and think that at a certain point, there's just going to be more unemployment. Entertainment as it relates to like live events and so forth certainly isn't coming back anytime soon, and that there's going to be less buyers in the market, perhaps more people that need to sell, which will create more inventory or supply in the market that's going to create an imbalance here. Yeah. And the thing I see shift real estate probably as much as, if not more than anything else, is psychology. It's when does the psychology change that the chatter starts to become that the market's going down? When does that start to become the self-fulfilling prophecy? Because that can really that can influence the market as much as anything. But right now, again, even with all the different reports we're all seeing on the news every day, the housing market here, I'm seeing multiple offers on tons of stuff across the board at all different price points. So I'm hopeful that LA is one of those markets that will weather the storm, and maybe there is a correction, but that correction just kind of more stabilizes the market, maybe just a very soft landing. But there's some bleak indicators ahead as well. So that's about, I don't know, I can give you more crystal ball. My crystal ball is that's about all I can.
It's fair. Ryan,
Yeah, so there's been a long-standing theory that the housing market recovery from the Great Recession was going to be kind of the weakest from 2008 to 2019. That was just in large part because demographics weren't that favorable for housing, right? And so what a lot of people didn't account for when COVID hit was the demographics of the millennial generation and the baby boomers lining up with the right kind of time frames for housing for first-time home buyers and for downsizing or retirement housing. Combine that with the lowest mortgage rates in the history of mankind, and you have the situation we're in today, right? So like 2008 to 2019, the demographics were too young and they were too old, right? So we weren't just seeing the movement, we weren't seeing the demand. And actually in 2014, it was actually the lowest year for purchase applications from 2008 to 2019, and rates were below 4.25 for that entire year, right? Even that entire cycle. And so it's not just interest rates that's moving this, it's the demand for housing because of the demographics being so overpopulated in those two markets, right? And so what we've seen, it's funny that we did this, 2.5 months ago. The week after we did our first one, we had the first uptick in year-over-year purchase applications, and it has been positive for 9 weeks in a row. The last 5 weeks were 21%, 18%, 15%, or the last 4 weeks, and 33% last week. We're up 33% in purchase applications year over year, right? And last year was a really great year, right? Economically, it was a great year. Stock market was doing well. Unemployment was at an all-time low. Interest rates were really low, right? We had 3.5 rates last year. So it's really more of a matter of the economics of demographic. And then secondly is that there's still 138 million employed workers.
Sure.
Right? Like we're normally at 160 million. So obviously we're down there, but that 22 million worker gap, unfortunately, those people were in the kind of lower income tier and typically weren't going to be in that home buyer demographic anyways. And so when you look at what it takes to create a stable market demand, it's only 4 million mortgage buyers per year, which keeps the market stable. Right. So people think about unemployment and these numbers.
Basically of the employed people, right?
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, there's 3 things that I think will impact real estate in a negative way. Right. One is an overwhelming fear of this if this virus kind of spirals out of control.
Yeah.
Right. That could have a negative impact. It will create kind of desperation selling. And if that desperation selling is not met with demand to pick up that inventory, that will be a challenge. But right now, and John could probably speak well to this, we could actually use some desperation selling, right? There's way more demand than there is inventory, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing that's what's creating such a spike in prices. I mean, we're having clients that are offering 5% above asking price and still getting beat. And then lastly would just be is if government tightens lending, right? So if there's this overwhelming belief that something negative is going to really be impacted, that's when we'll start to see the low down payment loans go away, the bank statement or the non-qualified mortgage programs will disappear again. The jumbo products will really tighten down because they've opened back up pretty substantially since we've talked last.
So I want to talk about that. So today, I think I looked at the 10 years at 60 basis points, right? Rates are super low. Actually, I watched what we did a couple months ago, and you said that rates should be much lower than that, and they have dropped quite a bit since then. I just refinanced my house at 2.65%, and I'm in all of my clients literally refinancing at this point, right? Can you talk a little bit about what's driving that and how long that's going to last a little bit?
Well, it should be lower.
Right?
Yeah, if you look at the spread, where the spread between the 10-year and the 30-year is the largest it's ever been, and it's really just a product of 2 things. One, fear, right? Uncertainty. And that's, fear around this gets worse. And then you start seeing defaults and lower rates. So there's a little bit of a hedge there. The second thing is just capacity, right? You go to a restaurant and there's a line around the door or line around the building. You're not going to go in and haggle on the price, right? And so lenders are doing the same thing. They don't have to lower price. And if they did lower price, they'd be even more overwhelmed than they are today, which is almost hard to believe, right? Like the pain and stress and pressure that mortgage companies are feeling right now is at an all-time high. And we're seeing people that are quitting the industry, right? They're making more money than they've ever made in their life, but they're working 14-hour days, and everyone else's external pressures, which are at an all-time high, are rolling downhill to the lender. And we're up 70% year over year in production, and we didn't hire 70% more people last year.
Wow.
So that's where you start to see, before this call started, John was saying, he's seeing a lot of lender challenges, and it's clear to see why. I mean, there's just not enough human beings in the mortgage world to facilitate the amount of demand that is happening in the mortgage space today.
John, you wanna take a stab at that?
I'm just taking notes over here. I think everything Ryan said is brilliant and spot on.
Yeah. I refinanced with Bank of America, maybe too much to share, and my transaction took 4 months. It was insane. It's basically started before COVID, and it's insane. And we're seeing this across the board, as you said, because there's no capacity. What isn't the digital tools should come in here and start helping, or just banks are behind? Like have not really got up to this, or?
So digital tools were starting to work in a normal world, right? Because we could look at your tax returns, and we could have a digital imaging system that gives us your income, right? Or we could pull the information from the IRS. Well, now we have what's called COVID guidelines. They're legitimately called COVID guidelines.
Wow.
And the COVID guidelines state that you have to overlay a lot of different checks and balances to ensure that that person is still earning that level of income. So all of the automated or AI or all of the normal software that was starting to pick up steam has really become rendered useless, because it can't tell me if a self-employed person who was making really great income in 2019 is making any income right now, right? Or if someone who made great income, but they had commission and bonus and overtime last year, I don't know if that commission, bonus, and overtime is still happening, right?
Sure.
So, and then we're trying to call for verifications of employment to figure this stuff out, and Sandy from HR is at home with her kids, so we can't get a hold of Sandy from HR to tell us what's happening in the with that person's income, and so there's just delay after delay. And then escrow companies are slow, title companies are overwhelmed, appraisals are taking forever, and they're challenged to find comps because of the lack of sales in the last 3 to 6 months. So yeah, it's tough.
So basically, best rates ever, just can't get it. Just can't make it happen.
Just get in line, right? Get in line and wait.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, John. I mean, he mentioned COVID guidelines. How is showing houses? How is the process of dealing with listings and so forth changed during COVID? Like, can you start?
It's really loosened up, at least here in LA, in the last 2.5 months since we last spoke. Back in like April, we were all scrambling to just try to find ways to do everything virtually. We were doing these what's called a 3D Matterport tour, which allows you to literally take a 3D tour of the home, which it's a remarkable technology. But I get maybe, 10%, and that might be high, of the showing requests that I get are for virtual showings.
Really?
90% or more are in person. And it's just, just standard precautions. Everybody, of course, wears a mask.
Right.
I showed a property earlier today where I walked up and they literally had, we kind of made a cute thing of it, a COVID station, where like it was right outside the front door, and it was put on your booties, put on your gloves, here's your hand sanitizer. If you got your mask, here's one for you. So, it depends whether the house is vacant or occupied. Vacant houses, of course, are just, infinitely easier to show right now. Occupied homes, it's case by case. I have a couple of listings that I literally can't show because the owner has just said, my family's there and I don't feel comfortable. And obviously, I think the one sort of overarching thing here, taking real estate out of this, is everybody just needs to do what they feel comfortable with right now.
Sure.
As it relates to everything, right? Just how you live right now. You have to do what feels right for you. So, I'll tell you candidly, there's some people taking it more seriously than others.
Sure.
I have showings where people are like, very serious about wearing masks. I have others where they walk in and they go, do I have to wear this? So, but that's, again, that's sort of a reflection or a microcosm of, the rest of society right now.
Right.
So yeah, we're out showing.
So maybe this has something to do with it or not. We're seeing a lot of pocket listings. A lot of clients have told us, hey, there's a pocket listing here. Is that partially because of COVID? People don't want to really put their house in the market. Can you go over that a little bit? Maybe even explain how that works?
Yeah, I'm personally not seeing a huge spike in pocket listings. They've always been prevalent here in LA for, again, kind of obvious reasons, because we live in a market where we have a lot of high profile individuals, many of whom don't want it publicly known that their house is on the market. Sure. They don't want a bunch of strangers or looky-loos or, fans coming through their house and what have you. I always say you can define a seller by their level of motivation, and we, live in a town where a lot of people aren't particularly, what I would call real sellers. They don't have this very frustrating combination of high expectation and low level of motivation. It makes for a very difficult job. So a lot of them just kind of want to dip a toe in the water. And I think that perhaps has been heightened by COVID, that maybe they just don't want to have a bunch of strangers, people coming through their home unless they're like really qualified. Pocket listings have actually become a lot more challenging. This is somewhat off topic, but the MLS made a pretty radical change to our guidelines within the last couple of months as it relates to pocket listings that don't really allow us to be able to mark. If you have a signed listing and you try to market that off market by like sending it out in e-blast or putting it on your social media, and they catch you, they'll fine you $5,000.
Wow.
They want that inputted into the MLS, and that has nothing to do with anything COVID related. That's just them trying to control the market.
Yeah, how can they do that? What's MLS role? Like,
the MLS's role is essentially to be a platform to be able to showcase listings, and they are concerned that too many listings are being sold without them taking a piece. And not that they're participating in commissions by any means. And again, I'm getting somewhat off topic, but it's become a real factor in terms of how we use pocket listings to our benefit, because we sell a lot of real estate off market. Again, in a town like LA, where a lot of people would prefer to be discreet, it's really hard to keep big sales out of the news. So people would prefer to try to fly under the radar if they can. Look, as an agent, we used to be the gatekeeper. So if you wanted information about a property, you had to come to one of us. Today, Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, there's so much information readily available just by having an internet connection that a pocket listing holds a lot of value as an agent, because you have something that the consumer doesn't know about, and that inherently has value.
So, okay, thank you for that. That's a good segue, because that's the world I work in or I live in, which is some of these tech companies that trade on public markets. Right, and they all have done super, super well. When we talked a couple months ago, everyone was wondering, is Redfin going to make it or Zillow going to make it? There's no doubt their stock is saying they're going to be around for a long time. Their valuation is sky high. Can you tell me a little bit about how they've been helping you? And I don't want you to get in trouble, because I know you have a personal relationship with Zillow and so forth. But can you talk maybe about that relationship? How are they helping you guys? Are they allowing you to get more leads and just have these digital tools per se?
Sure. So you mentioned earlier when you were asking Ryan about are there going to be ways to kind of streamline the process by just making it more automated? And there's been a lot of talk about companies like Redfin and Zillow kind of coming for our jobs, and the same way that the travel agent went the way of the dinosaurs, our real estate agents and mortgage brokers to follow suit. The way I view it is, Zillow and Redfin and companies like that are essentially lead generation platforms. They're not here to take our place. There's too many touch points in the transaction that require human hands and involvement. They're here to help generate leads, because the reality is more people are coming to find homes online, especially during COVID, when most people are just sat at home and everyone's online. So
they try to start buying real estate.
Yeah. No, Zillow's got into what's called Zillow Offers, where they go in and make offers to buy your property. They have Zillow Home Loans now, which Ryan's probably familiar with. That they're trying to carve out a little niche right there in the mortgage market. They're both a technology company and a real estate company, but they also, I think, unless they're plotting and cheating behind closed doors, are not looking to take out the real estate agent. I don't think that they're looking to make enemies of us. I think they're looking to, hey, this is the world that we live in today. They both came up with really great interfaces, really great, easy, user-friendly platforms. And the Zestimate might be like the greatest algorithm ever created. It's not reliable and not accurate for everyone that is looking at that to determine the value of your home. But it's a really catchy tool that drives a lot of traffic to their site. So yeah, I'm one of Zillow's preferred partners here in Los Angeles. They are, I'll just share, they're making a radical shift in their platform. Yeah. They've always done what's just called market-based pricing, wherein you just simply pay a certain amount of money to them to receive leads in a certain zip code. Mm-hmm. What they've realized, the flaw with that is that anybody with a checkbook and a real estate license can do it. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that aren't particularly professional, that drop the ball, and they were finding that 52% of the time that someone inquires about a property, they weren't even receiving a return phone call.
Wow. So,
let's equate them to another technology company like Uber. Imagine if you call an Uber and 52% of the time they don't send a car. Yeah. At a certain point, so they recognize that that's not a sustainable model, that they have to completely change who they are and how they do business and what agents they associate themselves with. So they selected 10 agents in LA County to partner with, and unfortunately I was one of them. So we're doing a tremendous amount of business with them right now, and people you would not expect to be online looking at houses, people who have business managers and attorneys and handlers and so forth, are online looking at houses because it allows you to be discreet, because you can do it at your own pace and discretion. No one's trying to sell you. You're not walking into a car dealership. Someone's trying to, they can do it quietly and privately, and then at the moment there's engagement, the door opens.
That's amazing. I'm glad to see that, because, as you said, it's buying a home is not only is the biggest purchase most people do, but it's just also nerve-wracking. Like, there is so many things that can go wrong, and for someone to try to do it by themselves is just ridiculous. So I'm glad that they're providing the leads to the good agents, because that's really how it should be.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that overall that's what we're kind of seeing right now across lots of different industries, but certainly in ours, is that there's going to be, well, our industry is so busy right now, maybe it's not applicable in this moment, but there's going to be some weeding out of, the sort of the casual agent, the agent that does a deal, every couple of months, as opposed to people that really are focused on doing this as a career.
Yep. And what about you, Ryan? Are you seeing any digital players coming in and helping in the mortgage market? I mean, you see Quicken Loans is one of the most expected, highest valued IPO coming into the market next few weeks. That's a big player in the mortgage market. Any other things that you're seeing on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a play for the cheap version, right? Like, if you're the lowest interest rate, and you have a good enough system where you can push people through it continually, there's going to be revenue to be earned there. Quicken's interesting because they're definitely not the cheapest. They actually are one of the most expensive. They just happen to advertise more than most.
And when you say expensive, the cost of the loan or rate? Or both?
Yeah, both. Yeah. I mean, they charge notoriously the most points of any lender. The rates are the highest, and their whole model is that they can take advantage of the majority of the country that just doesn't have the educational background to shop that or know the difference, and they're just happy to get a loan. And for the people that say, hey, look, I don't want to pay these points, they just lower the points at that time. So they just do something really well, right? They create 21 million leads in 2019, right? Wow. And so that's the game, right? Is it, the consumer is going to have a really clear choice moving forward, right? And we're actually on the forefront of trying to change our industry for the better, not only the mortgage industry, but the real estate industry as well. So our Art of Homeownership platform is derived around the fact that you can have the cheapest realtor or the cheapest mortgage, that's fine. You just need to know what you're leaving on the table, right? And most realtors and lenders haven't figured out the value play right? They talk about customer service and experience and those types of things, which I think are very much subjective. But the real estate professional and the mortgage professional who can look a client in the eye and say, look, no one's ever become successful by managing their expenses, right? Or saving on commission, or getting a point lower interest rate.
Yeah.
People grow their success and they grow their generational wealth, and they become wealthier by guidance, advice, and planning. Same reason people hire you, Hatem. Same reason people hire you, John, is that we can actually help them not just to go into debt, which is what most mortgage companies do, but we can actually help them with their growth, right? We can help them plan for long-term real estate goals. We can help them, manage generational wealth with parents and children, and we can help them save money at every turn and avoid bad decisions. But it takes real care and insight. And, I think we're one of the only mortgage practices that I know of in the country that has a whole division of our company that does nothing but engages with our past clients to try and continue to offer advice, guidance, and 7 different unique services that help them for 30 plus years, because there's a big difference between just owning a home and being a successful homeowner.
Yeah.
We're not interested in helping people just own homes, right? Like, we want to help them become very successful homeowners. And so there will be that divergence. And if we don't solely solve that problem, other people will. But we're very much looking forward to that too, right? Because you just pick the cheapest or pick the most valuable. Just don't choose anybody in the middle. And that's unfortunately where 99% of our industries lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I saw that platform. It's pretty impressive, and I'm with you, man. If you can provide good education, you're gonna have a client for life, and people will appreciate you for that. I'll shift gears a little bit. I think we have about 10 minutes left before we take some questions. And John, you said last time we spoke that real estate is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
And obviously we talked about why we haven't seen that breakdown in pricing and why the market is so strong. But can we talk maybe a little bit about the commercial market, maybe high level? I know you don't do a lot of commercial stuff, but we have some clients who are trying to invest in multifamily and so forth. What are you seeing out there? What are the trends?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I'm not a commercial broker, so I can talk about this just more high level. I don't. First of all, I don't have any clients that are really looking at buying multifamily right now because of the moratorium on evictions at the moment. Nobody wants to touch it because that's the sort of safety net or ripcord that every landlord has is, hey, if I have a deadbeat tenant, I can always evict them. Well, with the moratorium in place, you can't do that, and thus, I mean, look, I have one client who's done $350 million in multifamily commercial over the last 5 years. And he called me up just a couple months ago and he said, well, I'm not touching anything in multifamily for at least the next 12 months. So let's go look at some houses. And he's like, I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. So let's go look at, flipping some houses. It's a nice problem for me to have. So, as multifamily goes, I think that there's just a lot of uncertainty there for landlords, and thus I have a lot of people not really interested in touching it, and I'm not seeing much of it coming to market. Mm-hmm. As far as, other commercial types of assets go, like, let's say, a retail space, I mean, I think that one's rather obvious. Nobody really wants to touch retail at the moment. I think that there will be a lot of opportunities in the coming 12 to 18 months. I think that unfortunately there's going to be an extremely high rate of commercial lease defaults. And I think landlords are going to be forced to have to renegotiate a lot of lease terms.
Yep.
And, a lot of them won't, a lot of them won't re-sign, won't re-up. And I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities there, but I think the floor is quite a ways out.
Yep. Yep. Ryan, you have any comment on that? Like, what's going on in that market, in that lending market?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every different class of commercial is going to have a different impact. I think the residential space of commercial, which is anything 5 units or more, we're just seeing really low cap rates on that stuff. And the multiples, like the rent multiples, are like 25 years, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense from an investment perspective. I think that people are just asking too much for it. And granted, there's some great long-term capabilities there, but it still has to make financial sense. It has to pencil out. And with the restrictions around being able to really manage your tenants, if they are paying or if they're not, it's a little bit of a a risky situation to buy into right now. I think from a commercial space, I mean, we have, I think, I don't know, as a company, it's an ungodly amount of square footage as a 8,000 employee company, and very few people are in their offices, right? And so you're going to have just a lot of challenges there. And so I think that there will be some opportunities, but they're going to be few and far between. And I'm not up to speed on the market enough to really speak intelligently to it. So I think from a high level perspective, it's concerning, but I'm sure there's some gems in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think just from like a just common sense perspective, look, we're all working from home right now. So Ryan, you're a perfect example. You guys have 8,000 employees, as you said, an ungodly amount of square footage to accommodate that. We as a real estate company have offices all over the world, but predominantly here in Southern California and the West Coast, and no one's in them right now. Everyone's working from home. So, if this is another 6 or 12 months, okay, then, people will eventually kind of want to get back into those spaces where you can collaborate and congregate. But if this goes, heaven forbid, 18, 24, 36 months, people are going to adjust to making this the new norm. And those spaces are just going to become less relevant and therefore less valuable. And again, that's a terrifying prospect for the commercial world. I've spoken to a couple of colleagues and buddies in that space, and they're pretty scared about what the next 12 months has in store.
Yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot. We have a lot of clients in commercial real estate, and it's not pretty right now. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think this working from home trend is here to stay. Even if COVID is gone tomorrow, a lot of people are realizing that maybe they don't need to be in an office 5 days a week, and thankfully all these digital virtual tools are very good and people are used to it. Like our productivity ratios for our client meetings has actually increased because they're in Zoom, because people are like, I can meet with you for 30 minutes on Zoom. I just don't want to drive to Santa Monica to come and see you.
Yeah.
So
the single greatest byproduct of all this so far, no joke, is what it's done to the traffic. That's no joke. That is the biggest objection most people have about LA, because there's not much to object to. It's a beautiful place to live, year-round weather and so forth. It's the traffic. The traffic's just a pain in the ass. Yeah. You can get anywhere right now at any time of day. I was driving home from Beverly Hills. I live in Studio City. At 5 o'clock on Monday, I might have gotten home at like 8 a.m. on Tuesday, ordinarily. And I mean, I flew home in 20 minutes. So let's just say for the sake of conversation that this stay-at-home trend does stay in place, or even 20% of it, 50% of it. What it's going to do to the quality of living here in LA and your ability to get from one point of town to the other is only going to, I think, increase the value of what it is to live here.
Yeah, I think the commercial operators are going to have to reimagine their spaces, right? Because people are still going to want to have that sense of community and that feel, but I may not need 30 cubicles and 20 offices, right? I may need a couple conference rooms and a collaborative workspace where I can decrease my footprint by 80%. And we can go meet on Mondays and Fridays and do a happy hour. Like just you still get the community, but you don't need to always be there. And I just think that reimagining those commercial, lease or office spaces is going to be probably priority number one. Yeah,
I totally agree with you, and I think there is some smart architects and smart developers that are thinking through this right now, and I think that's going to be a hot trend for the next few years. But John, yes, I totally agree with you, man. This traffic situation in LA is just fantastic right now, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying that part of it.
Yeah. We're about done. Thank you guys for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I know you both are super busy. I'm just going to open it up for some questions. If you have any, I kind of went over the place and we talked about everything that I really wanted to speak of. Is there any other comments you guys want to add? Any things that we haven't covered?
I think we covered a pretty broad spectrum.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would just add, if you're a consumer and you're trying to buy a home, or you're trying to refinance, just make sure the expectations are set well. Like don't have an expectation that is not consistent with what your lender or your real estate agent is telling you. And so whether it's getting an offer accepted in a challenging market, whether it's time frame on a close of escrow or a refinance, make sure the expectations are there. It'll just make going through it a lot easier. And you won't have the same level of stress and anxiety because you'll just know it's normal, right? I mean, nothing is normal compared to 6 months ago now, not to mention real estate or finance, but any aspect of life. And so just practice gratitude and patience, and we'll all get through it together.
Yeah, I think a huge part of what Ryan and I both do day in and day out is manage expectations. And for me, one of the biggest misconceptions in all this is, where's the deal? I want a deal. And it's like, I don't remember the last deal I saw. I mean, again, if it's stuff right now is either selling or it's not selling. It's that simple, right? If it's selling quickly and oftentimes in multiple offers because, there's various reasons. But speaking to this point, it was priced correctly. Mm-hmm. If it's not selling, the number one reason for that, despite whatever other flaws or objections that property may have, is that it's just not priced correctly. So people that are looking if you're really looking for a deal, you're gonna need to be patient, watch the days on market continue to tick up and up and up, and go looking for that stuff that's been on the market for a long time. But the reality is that it's been on the market for a long time, they're not a real seller. They're not particularly motivated to sell. So that's the biggest that's the biggest misconception that I'm trying to sort of manage expectations on, is trying to go out and find a deal, which there's just, it's not this market.
Well, I'll add to that. One of the reasons I love working with both of you guys is you both are true professional in a way where you've always set the right expectations. You never went and overpromise, and try to obviously fight for your clients. But that's so important in this time and age, because everyone is expecting so many things that they're just not attainable. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
One of the things too that I kind of forgot to mention is if you own a home right now and you're potentially interested in selling it, but it may need some work, right? It's just it's not fully up to community standard, or it's a little bit dated, and you're kind of trying to save money or wait to do some of those renovations before you sell it. Now, we just rolled out a new kind of pre-sales renovation financing platform that essentially will allow us to help you finance all those upgrades and renovations prior to selling the home, and there's no cost, right? You don't pay any interest, there's no fees. We can go up to 75 to 80% of the value of the home. And so whether it's a couple $1,000 paint job or staging all the way up to a kitchen remodel, bathroom remodel, don't let that stop you from transitioning into the home that you want because you think that you may not get the highest price. We've really been able to help people maximize their return on their investment on their current property. So
you should give them a line of credit before, as they're selling it, just to do those repairs, or you refinance beforehand? Or?
Correct. Yeah, no, it's not a refinance. You don't have to qualify for it. You legitimately say, hey, look, this is what we need to have done. The contractors will, give a bid, and we'll finance that amount up to 75%. Again, no fees, no cost, no interest. When the transaction closes, the seller reaps the reward of the higher price and more of the proceeds of the sale, and then the second mortgage is then paid off. But didn't cost the seller anything.
That's amazing.
It's a huge value add.
Yeah. Huge. Cool. So I'm going to see if we have any question. I'm going to open it up for some question. I don't know if Alan can do that for us.
Love Davey's picture.
Yeah. Davey, new way of working from home, probably scaling down of traditional office users. What impact do you see that having on shared office operator? WeWork, right?
Yeah, I think they were already in trouble before the pandemic. Can't help them after.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's a good question. Like, what do you? Who's going to a shared office space right now?
Well, there could be. I mean, again, assuming the world heals, there could be an upside there, right? Because maybe you give up your bigger square footage office and you just rent a few of those, right, for people to come to work when they need to meet clients when they need to do presentations when they need to. So again, whether the actual building creates their own versions of it, or whether those shared office operators create more of a system around that, there could be an upside there. I could see that.
I definitely agree with that. Again, I mean, there's, it's hard to know what the future looks like in terms of like, okay, so sanitizing those spaces in between different groups coming in and so forth, but people will figure that part out. I mean, that's just that's the X's and O's, and we'll figure that out. But yeah, if companies are going to be getting rid of these, larger spaces that they, have 100% of because they just don't need it at that same sort of level, then those kinds of spaces could potentially become valuable if someone really finds a great way to work through the, the sort of challenges that we can all think of right now.
Yep.
It goes back to maybe an opportunity down the road, as you said, John, in a few months or a couple years, when we're going to get through this, and how do you repurpose some of these spaces and figure out what the new iteration of a post-COVID world look like,
Yeah, and not everybody wants to work from home. I can tell you my employees would tell you that. I mean, they have kids at home and distractions, and they don't have a great work environment, and it's like they would love to get to the office. And thankfully we're a group that is considered necessary, and so our office is open, so people can go there, and they are going there. They're just keeping distance. And so yeah, I mean, there'll be a ton of people who need a place to go. It's just a matter of if the employer wants to take down that whole space or just smaller versions of it.
Yep.
Ryan, speak a little more about loan with no fees for remodeling. How do you make money on that?
Yeah, so essentially what the financing company does is they get their fee from the contractor, right? And so, and you can use your own contractor. You can use to get bids against it. Essentially, it's used for people who either don't want to access the money or don't have access to the money. And so essentially what happens is a normal contractor would pay anywhere from 5 to 10% of their operating expense on marketing. And so if the finance company can just give them jobs, and the contractor doesn't have to pay the expense of finding that job, they would pay the financing company, a portion of the job, right? And so, and the first question we get asked is, so is the contractor inflating the cost, and is that costing me money? Short answer is no, because you can comp it out against any contractor that wants to participate. So it creates this kind of competitive marketplace for contractors to stay within range of competitiveness while still keeping the cost of that renovation outside of your scope, and ultimately allowing you to earn more on the financing or on the sale of the home. So it's just an interesting way of the financing company offering that capability of doing it while not charging you, and the contractor participates in the cost.
Great. It's awesome program.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah, I think we're good on questions. I really appreciate you guys taking the time again. Stay safe. Ryan, enjoy your time in Tahoe. John, hopefully I see you soon.
Hope so.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks again, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Appreciate you having us.
Take care.
Talk soon.